This past Friday, March 5th, 2021, the February Cup finals concluded with Rhinus being the victor. He went all the way through the winner's portion of the tournament, completely undefeated. He only dropped 3 games over the course of every set that he played the entire way. He was the number 7 player, and he managed to come through, dominate, show what he was made of with his strict mech style, and he made something excellent happen. He won a tournament. I didn't have him in my power rankings as winning, even though AC, the number 1 player, wasn't there. I still didn't have Rhinus winning. There were a lot of upsets and people going in different ways and making it further than they should have, or not as far as other people predicted they would have. And this was a fantastic opportunity because it was a double elimination, best of 3 tournament for the Little War Game community and the people who hadn't played in a tournament in quite some time to show what they were made of, what their skills were, and to be given a format that would reward them for the opportunity to go ahead and do exactly that. And unfortunately, I have to talk about the other context of the February Cup, which is that from a tournament moderation standpoint, it was a complete disaster. Matches still got done, but it's left a lot to be desired. So I'm going to start right before I get into all of this and say that the tournament moderator, PhysicsFan, I've done videos with PhysicsFan. I've hit PhysicsFan up for an opportunity to do interviews or make content for the Little War Game RTS channel. I've streamed with PhysicsFan. I have cast with PhysicsFan. I have even met PhysicsFan in purpose. None of these are things that I would have done if I have a personal dislike towards him. But the fact that I do personally enjoy his company and I do like talking to him has nothing to do with whether or not the things that went on in the moderation of this tournament were acceptable. And they just, frankly, I don't want to make this video. The problem is there are people who are around who maybe they were in the tournament but they didn't get very far, or maybe they were wanting to cast the tournament on the side, or they were just casually interested in the games. And if those people still don't know the context of something that happened less than a week ago, then I'm not going to put on the Little War Game RTS channel. That's for something else entirely. But this channel is the perfect opportunity to actually explain all the things that went wrong and where it just was so badly askew. Because there were other players that were harmed by this. There were other people who didn't get to play in the event because of this. It's just a cacophony of errors that hopefully going forward we don't see in future Cup series. So the first thing you have to start off with right off the bat is that there's a giant conflict of interest, which is that PhysicsFan, the moderator for the tournament, the person who is the tournament's admin, he sets the rules, makes adjudicates placements in the bracket. He's the one who's responsible for finding out who will play against who in the initial rounds and when the tournament will start. And if there's a question of rulings, who gets to do that? Potentially he wants to cast as well. But he's also a player. You cannot be a player in a tournament that you are moderating for. It is a conflict of interest. It causes a problem immediately. Here's the first problem with being a player in a tournament that you are moderating. First off, you normally make these, as was done in this case, you make the tournament on a challenge bracket. All right? We don't have an official circuit for Little War Game. How do you determine who goes ahead and is placed inside of that bracket? Now, if your answer is anything to the tune of the tournament moderator does it, that is completely gone out the window. That's not allowed. That is not acceptable because it could invite things such as, let's say there were 13 players in this tournament, as I believe there were. Let's say that PhysicsFan he ranks them 1 to 13, and then he places himself on the low end of the middle, so that he doesn't, in theory, because normally the way parrying ups work in these systems is the top seed and the bottom seed fight each other, and then the second and third and fourth, and then the middle, number 6 and 7 get to fight each other, right? Already there's a conflict of interest there because he could set up the bracket and the player rankings in such a way that he is the person who is the beneficiary in a way that is undue and unfair and a process for which none of the other players have recourse because he is the admin who is supposed to be avoiding those scenarios in the first place. The second problem with being a player in your own tournament this way is, okay, let's say you clear that hurdle, right? Let's say you outsource. This wasn't done to my knowledge, by the way, but here's an excellent way, if you want to be a player in your own tournament, that you can get around this. Give moderation responsibility to somebody else in the community. Okay? Let's say you still want to be a player, who plays in your own tournament. You're not phased. No one else is bothered by this for some reason. If you're going to rank people explicitly for the purpose of determining what their first round matches are, you must give that role to somebody else. You must give it. You can be the tournament organizer, you can be the person who starts the tournament, and here's the challenge, and here's the sign-up page, and this is the list, and this is the general rule set of where we're going to go. But you must give who signs into the bracket to somebody else who is not playing in the tournament. So AC, for instance, ended up not playing in this tournament. Now, he might not have had the list that Physics Fan or I or any other single player would have, but as a player who is very skilled, who is outside the context of this bracket, and in the outside the context of being affected by the bracket directly, he would be a good resource. I was casting it, I would have been an excellent resource if you wanted to outsource who the ranking goes to. If you want to do it by a committee of other people that are outsourced, that's fine. But you must do two things. You must outsource who gets the rankings, because it affects the bracket directly. It affects the path that other people have to take through the tournament directly. And number two, you must make sure that that is explicated so that everybody knows in advance. They must know in advance. There must not be a single question as to whether or not something was wrong or something was undue. There's a second aspect of this in tournament moderation, which I don't know how many tournaments or events Physics Fan has run. I would presuppose not many. And as I said, I hope that these all get corrected, and Physics Fan is willing to do this in the future. But let's get into this. The start times were absolutely appalling. This February Cup was supposed to be a tournament that started on a Saturday and ended on a Sunday. Now, if you've never run a tournament before, I will just tell you, double elimination with best of threes and then best of five from semifinals on is a massive amount of time. A truly, we're talking easily, easy 10 hours. Easily 10 hours. Because if any of the games go 2-1, and let's say all the games are rushes and they end quickly. 15 minutes for a round. Okay, so you've got the 16 roughly, and that goes to 8, and then 4, and then 2, and then 1, and that's winners, that's semifinals, so that's the 16, 8, 4, 2, 1. Then you have to go through losers bracket. Losers bracket in this case had 4 rounds, I believe, or 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the person at the end of the winner's end. So if you've got 16 people, we have 13, but the math will suffice, you've got roughly 10 sets of games that are being played between everybody. And if they all only take 15 minutes, which is not going to happen, by the way, 10 times 15 minutes gives you 2.5 hours. That's assuming that games start as soon as the previous match ends, and that is not what happens whatsoever, especially if one person has a 40-minute macro game for game 3. Now, the whole tournament is delayed 25 extra minutes because they're waiting on the result. The bracket is choked up for this one match over there. That's not the fault of the players. That's just the game that they're playing. They're trying to win. If that's how they think they can win, then go for it. But that happening one time in each level adds 25 minutes per. So let's take it at 40 minutes each, which seems once you count in, you've got to find your opponent, find the games, do pick ban, figure out what the series is, and then do pick ban for the next map, and then you're done. You've got to wait for these people to go as well. So we're looking at 400 minutes. We're looking at nearly 7 hours, and that's only with no extremely long games. And the problem with this is that because it's so many matches, because it's so long, now, Physics Fan picked the wrong time. He picked the wrong time. He picked 2 p.m. PST, Pacific Time Zone, or Pacific Standard Time. The problem with the Pacific Standard Time is that we have an international community of players in Little War Game. It is not uncommon, and in fact it is increasingly common, for the high-level players to not be based in the United States of America. There are even some high-level or some strong players who are based in the Eastern Standard Time of the United States of America, 3 hours past that. So you are starting the tournament at 5 p.m. for some people. 5 p.m. for some. That's not counting all the people over in Europe who we're talking about 5, 7, 8 hours in advance. That's for people on the west coast of Europe. If you're on the eastern coast, or if not eastern coast, if you're on the eastern portion of Europe, or if you're in Australia, You couldn't even join. It was not feasible. In fact, AC, the #1 player on my power ranking, whether you think he's #2 or #3 for this tournament, if he had joined, is irrelevant. You've got a semi-finalist, possible finalist, guaranteed level player who is not able to play, wanted to play, loves these kind of competitions, couldn't participate because of the time requirements. They knew if we just keep going and there are no interruptions, I will be done at 4 or 5 or 6 in the morning the next day, which is not tenable, it's not possible, it's not reasonable, especially if they've been up the entire day previously. With time also factors into how long the tournament runs. The goal of the February Cup was for it to be a Saturday-Sunday tournament. Was it a Saturday-Sunday tournament? Absolutely not. And the problem with this is as follows. The end of Sunday, there was a best of 4, best of 5 rather. At the end of Saturday, there was, I believe, or Sunday, there was a best of 5 between Prankster Gangster and Rhinus. Rhinus had won the first 2 games. Prankster Gangster won games 3 and 4. And on the pivotal moment of game 5, when there's a chance that Prankster Gangster will reverse sweep him after this epic, tiring 40-minute macro match on Stream Junction of all things, where Rhinus looked like he was going to crash through and he finally starved himself out and ran out of steam. Rather than take that all the mentality and the fatigue and my hands are jittery because I've been doing this and I'm not feeling too good because I haven't eaten my food recently. Rather than take all of these factors and go into game 5 and just see, can Prankster Gangster do the reverse sweep against Rhinus, who is a tournament favorite at this point? Rhinus had stomped every single person 2-0. It wasn't close. He had close macro games, and then inevitably the other win he got was from a ridiculously strong cheese defense, and Prankster Gangster looked like this unknown person who nobody, I don't care, find anyone, nobody thought that Prankster Gangster would get to the point that he did. Least of all be this strong against Rhinus in the few months that he has been putting in some serious effort. No one thought it would happen. But game 5 was scheduled for a different day. You ruined the flow. People's hands weren't warmed up. The entire momentum of the series had just been reset because you just destroyed a best of 5. Instead, you've made a new best of 1 because you've gone on extra days and extra time that you hadn't allotted for. And that all stems from, by the way, starting the time zone when you did it. Here's the other role of a tournament moderator or a tournament organizer. When you say that the event is going to run Saturday to Sunday, it has to go Saturday to Sunday, especially because we are an international game, especially because having people meet up for time zones is extraordinarily difficult, especially because if there's anyone who's doing any ancillary content or shoulder content, such as myself, I was casting for as many games as I could. I cast 14 hours of things related to the February Cup. It's on Twitch Live. You can go look at it. I'm not even counting the behind-the-scenes things that were going on on top of that. I cast, of my own time, 14 hours of this tournament because it kept bleeding into the other aspects of my life and content creation the entire way. And it definitely did that for at least 2 other players I'm not going to name, because those were either private messages or the context might have been missed by other people, and I don't want to dredge that back up for everybody else. Also consider, when you have things on different days like that, and you are constantly scheduling and rescheduling, etc., some people got horribly, horribly screwed over. So Glava was this person who had managed to get to, I believe, losers semifinals. He was due to fight off against Works, the winner of that, losers finals. The winner of Glava and Works was going to escape the losers bracket and go all the way up and fight Prankster Gangster, who had been absolutely robbed, by the way, which is part of the reason I'm doing this video. Prankster Gangster was horribly robbed, and in fact, I'm not surprised at what happened next. So Glava had to drop from the tournament because of ping that wasn't an issue on the Saturday and Sunday, explicitly because, and a side effect of these timing issues. Then Prankster Gangster, who feels he got robbed, by the way, because VizXFan deliberately did not force Rhinus to keep playing, did not say if you leave, it's an automatic loss and your opponent, Prankster Gangster, wins, and Prankster Gangster goes to the winner finals. No, this guy who had been working so hard got doomed over because VizXFan wanted to be a nice guy to Rhinus and do what was convenient for him. And then that now works. Stomp Prankster Gangster 3-1 to go into the finals. And you can't help but wonder what the massive what if is going into that. The whole end stage of the tournament was messed up because this thing was being played out over several more days than it should have, in courtesy of time zones that it should never have been started on. So I envision a world where Glava Beats works because Glava actually has the internet to manifest it. Nearly did it with like 4-second ping delay in game 1 and in a Beast versus Beast over on Jade Wadi. Nearly pulled it off anyways and couldn't because there was no micro potential on the part of his wolves whatsoever. So you just scuttle that finals out. You just scuttle the losers finals entirely. Then Prankster Gangster knows that he's been doomed over. Here's how you know Prankster Gangster has been doomed over. When Norm announced the March Cup, the continuation of the February Cup, the first question Prankster Gangster asked in the Discord was, what will be the punishment and what are your thoughts on people doing mid-series continuations? I think they're bullshit. I would not want somebody who is in mid-series to leave because it's to the advantage of somebody if that happens. There is a mental component to a tournament. There is a focus in-series meta that is relevant. There is the warmth and comfort of the players, their own stamina. All of these things matter in a way that, oh, you can just play game 5 on a different day, fails to address entirely. So I see a world in which maybe Glava Beach works, and then I get to see, hey, I get to see the rematch of Glava versus Prankster Gangster. Glava was put down in the losers bracket by Prankster Gangster 2-1. When given 2 extra games, can he go the distance in the series? If he can, does Prankster Gangster, does Glava come back and show that he's seeded over Rhinus for a reason? Because I think that would have been very advantageous to Glava. But if Prankster Gangster wins, he then gets the revenge opportunity against Rhinus. You've missed all these great stories and all this opportunity because you've just thrown away the bottom, the loser part of the bracket entirely. And you have messed up the ability of other people to play the game in a way that is important for them. The games must continue once they're in the series. They must. It doesn't matter what the time zone is. Imagine if you were playing, let's say I'm playing a large tournament and I'm 1-1 with my opponent and they did some unorthodox strategy that in a long macro game worked in game 1. I cheesed them game 2. And the tournament admin comes to me, hey, you wanna play game 3 now or you wanna go the next day? You think I'm not gonna vote yes, I wanna go the next day? This is not a democracy. You are the tournament admin. And that leads into something else that I saw, which is this. VizXFan seemed willing to outsource the decision as to what to do when it became apparent the tournament was going on longer and people were having questions about how they meet up and what happens if these two people dodge each other and they're in the wrong time zones and doing the Macarena and whatnot. What should I do? It's not a democracy. It doesn't matter how many people you ping. It doesn't matter who else you respect. It doesn't matter who else is there. You make the decision and then you live with the consequences. Okay? That's how it works. If you wanted to do something like that beforehand, here's a great example. When Hobo and I were making the rules for the Mentors tournament, we went ahead and put out the rule set in advance of the Mentor tournament. And there were people who looked at some rules and said, this is terrible. This is awful. You've got to fix this. And because we had rule sets, we could say, no, we don't want to do that because of this. Or, you know what? You make a good point. We hadn't considered that. We're going to go do it this way. Like, I understand your point. We're going to do that change. And so that is how you do it. You make the rules in advance, let other people see them, and then do it. You do not do on the fly, by committee, democracy of your tournament. It is your tournament. The other people there, and in the military we would call it positional authority, right? It doesn't matter who you think is a better player than you. It doesn't matter who is what the players are in their distance in the tournament. It doesn't matter what their personal feelings are on it. You are the one with positional authority. You are not a dev. You are not a mod. You are not an admin in the general little war game sense, but you are this tournament's admin. And that means that you are responsible for everything that goes on. You make the decisions and you're in charge. And if it's unacceptable to the players, then they can live with the consequences. If you can't deal with that, then find someone else to run the event for you. Speaking of these mid-series continuations, the finals had a mid-series continuation. Are you kidding me? That is not acceptable. I don't care what the time zone difference is between the people. You cannot, in a best-of-5 finals, by the way, there was a potential. We didn't even get into the dark horse of the world where this potential was realized. I'll get into it in a second. The games had been played. It was 1-1, Works Rhinus. Rather, 0-2, Rhinus was ahead of Works. Works is 1 game from elimination. He has to win the next 3 games to win the series, and he has to win a best-of-5 after that. It is Thursday night. Thursday night after the Saturday of the event, after the Sunday of the event. And there's a mid-series continuation, because once again, someone is tired, or someone needs to go take a break, or this isn't going to be doable anymore for them. That is unacceptable. That is not acceptable. That completely boggles the opportunity because it gives an unfair advantage to the players that can prep better, to the players based on their confidence and how they're feeling. Like you have given, for instance, I don't know Works this well, but if Works was the kind of person who was feeling mentally crushed by the fact that Rhinus was stomping him 2-0 and he'll need to win the next 3 games, when they rejoined on Friday, Works won the next game. You're going to tell me that Works would have won Game 3 if they had continued? I don't know. No one will ever know. You have completely missed the opportunity for us to ever find that out because of this. You destroyed the entire flow of the tournament as well, because then on Friday, when the mid-series continuation happened, people were doing shoulder contact. Me, like I was streaming, I was casting the games. I was casting for 15 minutes. Because Works won game 1 of that series, so now it's 2-1, and then Rhinus won the next one thereafter. I was streaming for 15 minutes. What kind of story can be set up? What kind of time can be set up? What kind of seriousness are you approaching the tournament with? If this is the level of effort and dedication that you're putting to it, and multiple times a game had been stopped that had Rhinus involved in it, and then Rhinus seemed to be once the beneficiary against Prankster Gangster, then once the person at a deficit. What kind of logic is this? You're not even going off of the idea of what's best for the players. And again, the fact that it was a mid-series continuation, the fact that it started so late and the mid-series continuation, actually we escaped the worst world. We escaped the possibility that I'm sure people could think about, but if they don't realize it, I'll just make it explicit. What would have happened if Works had reverse swept the series? What would have happened? At that point, it would have been Friday. Rhinus would have had to have headed out soon. And you have now ended the tournament that started the previous Saturday on Friday. The series has been reset. Both have lost their 1 life. So it's now another best-of-5 to figure out who's going to do that. And I've been the person casting all of these games. Saturday and Sunday, I'm busy with the Mentor tournament. How is that going to work out? How is that going to work out at all? Unless you want the rest of the tournament, 12, 14 hours of content, casted, streamed, replays captured, etc., but not the finals? Not the grand finals? That is the world that we could have lived in. That was entirely possible. That was not outside of the scope of possibility whatsoever. So you've got to think about these things. You've got to think about the time that the event starts. Because if it's not convenient, if you're the tournament organizer, and it's not convenient for you, then you need to inconvenience yourself to make the tournaments happen. That is what has happened with Hobo. That's what happened with Zhao. AC has done that as well. I've done that. Everyone who's ever run a tournament has inconvenienced themselves first and foremost because it is not strictly fun. The tournament is fun. Watching players play is enjoyable. Watching people get hyped and excited and want to see things and do things and like, oh, this sparks the imagination and resurges people's desire to play ranked and like strong practice 1v1s and work on themselves and improve. That's all amazing. There's many benefits associated with personal satisfaction, like want to see your training or your improvement, like your ranking of how you see the players, meta, new builds, getting outside of your own games, like there's extra significance. There's a lot of reasons to run tournaments, but because it's convenient to you, it's probably the last and worst possible reason. If you are on a time zone that makes that almost untenable, then if you're not willing to run the event yourself, you can organize it, just say here are the rules and this is what the format's going to be, hand off the admin side to somebody else. You've got to start the tournament at a good time for everyone. And unfortunately, that means that it's something like EST, based in Eastern Standard Time, but like based around, I would say, 10 o'clock in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. That's 7 PST. That's about 5 p.m., 6 p.m. over in Europe. It's a little bit late for some people, but this is the world that we live in, right? We have to do something to make that possible. Don't have mid-series continuations. They're absolutely terrible. Don't outsource your own tournament's decisions. Don't look out for the interest or what other people think. Definitely don't ask the players things like, should this game count because of lag? That's unacceptable as well, because now you're putting the players in a position where we're a small community. Now they have to say, yes, it does count, and they're treated like scum by the rest of the community, like tryhards, and like, why are you doing this? There isn't money on the line. For the natural desire to win a tournament, win an event, win even a game, because that might be the match that makes the difference. Or to say, no, it's good, and then have to deny in themselves that this is bull, they should have gotten that game or that series or whatever the case may be. You cannot, you must not ever be a player and the tournament admin. You can be the player and the tournament organizer if you hand the admin to someone else, and the admin makes it clear to you and to everybody else, you are just a player. You are not in any way involved in the rule making and the rule keeping. Now let's put something else out here, just a personal thing that bothers me a bit. Every time that I have cast any tournament, anything, right? Unless it is a show match, flavor of the moment, it struck my fancy. If it's anything like a tournament or something of that nature that has some level of organization, be it again with AC, Zhao, now Hobo, things that I've done by myself, etc. All of those things, every single one of them, I have a rule that I follow. It's very similar to what you do in theater. It's called curtain call, casting call. Basically, it works as follows. The show is going to go on at, let's say, 2 p.m. Let's say 3 p.m. It's going to go live. Everyone's going to be in the seats starting 3 p.m. You better be there in full preparation, full gear, full all your costumes and props checked, all of your locations done, warm-ups for, like, if you sing or if your voice is in check or something like that. You must be ready, good to go 1 hour beforehand. Do you know why? Because even if you are told be ready and go 1 hour in advance, every single time something happens. It may not be you this time, it may be somebody else, but something happens. Someone oversleeps, someone has car trouble, someone has this issue or that issue or the other, etc. And so you schedule with people what the plan is and when the plan is. And you make sure of that because something will go wrong, and in the event that it does, this is the buffer that you need. Because the worst thing that you can do is not start on time. In the theater, it's because there are people who are paying, or they are paying with the value of their time. And the central tenet is the show must go on. It must continue. And so don't show up at the last minute trying to do things like organizing casting, organizing maps, organizing who's going to watch what or do what, because the people who are doing things like that are just soldiering on as best as they can. Specifically me, if you want this expand, I'm talking directly to you right now. If you ever want to cast an event, or you want help moderating an event, maybe for a future Cup Series, one of these future monthly tournaments, I am more than willing and able to do that But I specifically want additional notice. And other people you will find who take on the volunteer roles in Little Wargame want additional time and awareness. We are not doing this for a living. We are all doing this out of passion because it is something that we want. And that is why, even though this was completely unacceptable, it doesn't preclude me from wanting to work with Vizixban in the future, and it doesn't preclude me from finding him in a role of being a tournament admin or moderator again. But these things have to be adjusted. They have to stand corrected. We have to avoid having another February Cup fiasco. If you enjoy the content that I make on this channel, or for the Little Wargame RTS channel on Twitch, or throughout any other space that involves Little Wargame, please consider subscribing to the Patreon link in the description box below.